Welcome. We are in Kimball Cemetery, Valparaiso, Indiana, and we're here to find murder victim. She was the first person killed in Porter County, when everything became established. Chauncey Page was the one that killed her, and he's here also in the cemetery, but he's in an unmarked grave. So Emily Goss is her name. I know exactly what her stone looks like, so we'll try to find it. And I'm going to use AI here to tell the story, just because I can't remember all the stuff. So I hope you guys don't mind. So let's see if we can find Emily's grave. All right, like I said, I know what the stone looks like. I don't see it anywhere over this way. I see a lot of footprints around here. Somebody's been here since it snowed. So I do know what her stone looks like, and here it is. It's broken in half there. I saw online where it said Chauncey's half was broken off, like they were both together on the same stone. I don't believe that for a second. I mean, let's think about it. He killed his wife, killed his mother-in-law, and tried to kill somebody else. And who's going to put their stone together? Emily's family? They're going to put Chauncey's name on the stone? I don't think so. But then I saw elsewhere online, I believe it was the Porter County Historic Society, Steve Shook does a lot of that work. Shout out to Steve, does a great job. And it was saying that he was in an unmarked grave. So we're looking for Emily Stone.
One of the most heinous acts of violence to occur in Porter County was committed by a man named Chauncey F. Page. Very little is known of Page's early life. From the 1870 federal census, we learn that Chauncey was born in 1844 in Pennsylvania. In addition, various historical accounts indicate that he was educated in Northwest Indiana and learned the trade of jeweler and watchmaker. According to Porter County marriage records, Chauncey F. Page married Emmeline E. Goss on January 29, 1865, in Valparaiso. Emmeline, commonly referred to as Emma, was born December 10, 1848, in Enon, Clark County, Ohio. Emma's mother was Rachel Hastings Goss Long, who was born July 17, 1810, in Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Rachel married John Goss, a union that resulted with at least 8 children, the youngest being Emma. John passed away in Enon in 1848, and Rachel remarried to widower Benjamin Long on April 5, 1857, in Enon. By 1860, Benjamin and Rachel, along with children from each of their previous marriages, including Emma, were residing in Porter County near Wheeler. It should be noted that one of Emma's sisters, Margaret, was the wife of Colonel Isaac C.B. Suman, who led the 9th Indiana Volunteer Infantry during the Civil War and later became the mayor of Valparaiso. Chauncey F. Page was employed as a jeweler by Aaron Rodgers in Valparaiso at the close of the Civil War. Seeking an independent future as a watchmaker, Page moved to Crown Point in Lake County and engaged in his own business. He spent much effort as an itinerant salesman, going door to door to offer his goods and services rather than relying on a storefront. Various accounts strongly suggest that the marriage of Chauncey and Emma was an unhappy one, quickly becoming intolerable by the first anniversary. Chauncey reportedly traveled, often leaving Emma home alone, and he seemed to restrict Emma's social life and interactions. Furthermore, Emma's family resided in Porter County. Given that travel was much more cumbersome in the late 1860s relative to today, it is suspected that Emma was not able to visit her relatives near Valparaiso perhaps as often as she would have liked. Within a year of moving to Crown Point, Emma had left Chauncey and returned to the home of her stepfather and mother, Benjamin Long and Rachel, Hastings, Goss, Long. The Long home was located at Pierce's Mills, also known as Union Mills, a very well-known location in early Porter County history where farmers took their grain to be ground into flour. The mill was approximately 2 miles southeast of Wheeler. An 1876 history of Porter County, written by A.J. Hardesty, who lived less than a mile from the Long residence, provides a first-hand account of the relationship between Chauncey and Emma.
Chauncey Page was without cause jealous of his young wife, who was a lady of more than ordinary mental qualities, and was as lovely in person as in mind. She was also very fond of society, and was the life of the parties and gatherings at which she was often found. But her husband, like the dog in the manger, would not enjoy life himself, and refused to allow his wife to do so. Consequently, there was not always peace in the family, and matters went from bad to worse until his wife, Emma, was forced to return to her mother's house.
Contemporary reports indicate that Emma sought a divorce about 1 year into the marriage. The stated grounds for the divorce included abandonment, failure to render support, and ill treatment. Her case was dismissed based on an informality, but in the fall of 1866, Emma had again filed for a divorce. The January 24, 1867 issue of the Marshall County Republican states,
Page has made frequent and open threats that his wife should never obtain a divorce from him, and went so far in his malignity as to offer a man $50 to seduce his wife so that he would have ground on which to base an application for separation.
The divorce proceedings were to take place during the 3rd week of January 1867. On Monday, January 14, 1867, Chauncey traveled to Valparaiso and registered as a guest of the Gould House, situated on the southeast corner of Main Street and Lafayette Street, where Central Park is now located. He signed his name in the hotel register and indicated that his residence was Chicago, though he initially had written Io, possibly in reference to Iowa, and crossed that out. Page then made plans to venture to the Benjamin Long home at Pierce's Mills in Union Township. At approximately 10 a.m. on Tuesday, January 15th, he traveled there in a sleigh driven by Champ Buell, a long-time acquaintance. On the way to Long's residence, Page queried Buell about Emma's social activities. He asked Buell whether he had seen his wife at any dances during the winter, to which Buell replied that he had not attended any dances that season. Chauncey then remarked that he had heard that some young men were quarreling about taking Emma to a dance. As they approached, they passed by Benjamin Long and saw Rachel peer out of a window of the Long home. Page and Buell continued just past the Long home to the mill nearby, where Buell dropped Chauncey off at the railroad tracks. Buell indicated he would pick Page up at the Long home upon his return to Valparaiso, though Chauncey replied that he would likely find another way back to town. During the ride westward, Buell had joked with Page about jealous husbands shooting their wives. There was some discussion about the joke, but Chauncey reportedly made no threatening remarks toward Emma. Reports also mention that Chauncey spent some time with his wife and her mother, apparently in a friendly manner. During his visit, Chauncey had learned that Benjamin Long would be away from his home that evening. Benjamin was traveling to Coffee Creek, now Chesterton, to visit his son, Christian. Christian Long owned and operated Liberty Mills, another flouring mill, in the far northeastern corner of Liberty Township on Coffee Creek. Chauncey presumably traveled back to Valparaiso at some time in the afternoon to his room at the Gould House. Benjamin's visit to Coffee Creek left 3 women at his home, namely wife Rachel, stepdaughter Emma, and Frederica Ludolph. Ludolph, commonly referred to as Ricky, had been invited by Rachel and Emma to stay with them during Benjamin's absence. Emma and Frederica had retired together to the southwest bedroom in the long home early in the evening of Tuesday, January 15th, while Rachel also went to bed early and slept in a room nearby. Paige, taking advantage of Benjamin's absence, first called upon the Valparaiso establishment of Louis H. Mandeville at 8 p.m. Mandeville was a prominent area photographer. He inquired of Mandeville if he had any negatives or photographs of him in his possession. Given the time of day, Mandeville later admitted that he spent very little effort searching and eventually told Paige that he had no such items in his possession. Paige then proceeded westward to the long home at Pierce's Mills to apparently confront his estranged wife. Accounts of the visit are consistent in stating that at approximately 9 p.m., Rachel was awakened by someone pounding violently upon the entrance door. Rachel lit a kerosene lamp that stood on a stand, approached the door and asked 3 times who was there. The person replied, "Paige," and he demanded that he be given entrance to the home. Rachel then asked Chauncey, "What do you want?" Paige replied he wanted to see M. Rachel informed Paige that since only ladies were currently in the home that evening, that she would have to deny him entrance. Enraged, Paige broke down the entry door with an axe and was immediately confronted by Rachel. No words were spoken, as Chauncey then fired 2 shots from his pistol into Rachel, who fell to the floor uttering a moan, then screamed, and afterward was quiet. Emma had heard the report of Chauncey's pistol and sprang out of bed to see her mother drop like a corpse to the floor. Emma approached Chauncey and fell to her knees. She begged and pleaded for him to spare her life and said, "Paige, my dear husband, don't do so anymore." Paige pulled Emma upward by an arm, partially raising her from her kneeling position, placed the muzzle of the revolver against her head, and pulled the trigger, the bullet entering her skull and killing her instantly. Paige then fired 2 additional shots, one at Rachel and one at Emma. It is believed that Paige was completely unaware of Frederica's overnight stay at the long home. Frederica had witnessed the dispatch of Rachel and Emma, and then pulled a bed cover over herself in an attempt to hide from Chauncey. Sadly, in her attempt to conceal herself by pulling up the bedsheet, one of Frederica's feet became exposed and was discovered by Paige. Paige fired at the bed but missed hitting Frederica. He then seized her foot and yanked Frederica from the bed, hauling her to the floor. Frederica begged and pleaded with Chauncey not to harm her, even promising to never divulge that he had killed Rachel and Emma. Paige was reportedly initially confused to learn that another individual, other than Rachel and Emma, was in the long home. According to Frederica's testimony, Chauncey had contemplated sparing her life. He changed his mind, however. He pulled Frederica up by her left arm to a nearly standing position and then violently shoved her to the floor.
Somebody was right by it. There's tracks right there. This is it. They didn't wipe it off, though, so that's it right there. Wow, sure is hard to read. That's Emily Stone right there. And the shape of it, it wouldn't have a spot for his name anyways. I mean, it probably comes up like this, and then, but there is a date. I think that says 1867. This is Emily. So this ain't Chauncey. But there she is.
Frederica began to stand, and Chauncey caught hold of her left wrist. Placing her at arm's length, Chauncey positioned the barrel of his pistol against the side of her head, just below and behind her right eye, and pulled the trigger. The ball passed behind her eyes. A second shot pierced Frederica's arm, while a third passed through her right knee. Insensible at first, Frederica recovered and saw Chauncey take the kerosene lamp that was earlier lit by Rachel and smash it upon the floor, lighting it with a match. Page then dragged Frederica by her hair through some of the flames. Frederica raised herself onto her elbows and initially begged that Chauncey kill her so that she would not burn alive. Frederica, however, then again pled for her life, saying she would never tell anyone about the incident. Page responded that he did not believe her, and at the same time, began to beat Frederica upon her head with a heavy chair until her groaning ceased and he supposed her life was extinct. Chauncey then knelt down to feel for breathing. Frederica testified that she could feel Page's warm breath upon her cheek and that she had held her breath feigning death. She then became unconscious. Satisfied that Frederica was indeed dead, Page escaped into the nearby woods. Unbeknownst to Page, however, is that Frederica was not deceased. Becoming conscious, Frederica found herself with her hair and chest in flame. Using a shawl that was lying nearby to quench the flames, she then miraculously dragged herself out the home. Upon making her escape to the snow-covered ground, Frederica again lost consciousness, saturating the snow into a crimson color with her blood. Approximately 3/4 of a mile east, quite a different scene was transpiring at the house of Mr. Eglin Smith, where a party was enjoying a social evening. The long home, now heavily engulfed in flame, was observed by Homer Smith from Eglin's home. Homer gave the alarm and rushed to the long home to render assistance in fighting the blaze. Another neighbor, Thomas D. Bushore, was sleighing home from a dance and also noticed the long home ablaze and immediately proceeded to sight. Upon arrival, however, Smith and others who had gathered at the scene were horrified to discover Frederica at the gate with her nightclothes drenched in blood and unconscious. Homer removed his coat and wrapped it around Frederica and took her to the home of her father, Martin Ludolph, where Valparaiso physician Dr. William Charles Paramore was summoned to tend to her injuries. The charred remains of the two women were soon found in the ruins of the home, and as other facts were learned, alarm was given, and a group of men organized to pursue Chauncey F. Page. This group of men was led by Porter County Sheriff Stephen Leroy Bartholomew. Soon after, the pistol used in committing the murders was found by several boys rummaging through the debris. When Louis H. Mandeville, the photographer whom Page had visited prior to venturing to the Long Home, learned of the murder, he conducted a detailed search of his negatives and photographs and was able to locate a negative of Page. He developed positives and then soon distributed these to the Valparaiso police and various detective agencies. The excitement in Valparaiso is intense, business is entirely suspended, and the entire population is out today scouring the country for the murderer. The only person to escape from the house was a young girl who was terribly mangled and is not yet expected to recover. A total of $500 was quickly raised through subscription by area residents and offered as a reward for the arrest of Page. Various newspaper accounts appear to agree as to details of the manhunt for Chauncey F. Page. After escaping the scene of the crime, Chauncey proceeded by foot 2 miles northwest to the village of Wheeler. A group of individuals that were sleighing on their way home from a party in Hobart observed Page walking along the Pittsburgh, Fort Wayne, and Chicago Railway in Wheeler. Page then apparently boarded a westbound freight train arriving in Chicago at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, January 16th. Upon his arrival in Chicago, Chauncey took a hack from the depot and requested that the hack driver deliver him to the City Hotel, located at the southeast corner of the intersection of State Street and Lake Street. Here, Page registered as Chauncey F. Page, Dyer Station, Illinois. Page's aged mother resided in Dyer Station, located in Will County. Given that he did not use a fictitious name, it is believed that Page had assumed that all evidence that could possibly point to his involvement to the tragedy that took place at the Benjamin Long residence had been destroyed by his act of arson. Page was shown his room. 2 days later, without examination of his bill, Page informed the clerk that there was an error in the bill, since he said that he had arrived on Tuesday rather than Wednesday. Page then obtained the hotel's register and turned back the pages to Tuesday and registered his signature among the entries. Next, Chauncey paid his bill, including for Tuesday's accommodations, and left the city hotel. At 10 a.m. on Thursday, Deputy Superintendent of the Chicago Police, John Jack P. Nelson, while he was sitting in the Central Police Station, spotted Page crossing LaSalle Street. He quickly approached Page, who immediately stated to Nelson that, "I have come to give myself up because I am innocent." Nelson took Page into custody, informing him it was okay to give himself to the police, even if innocent, and locked him in a cell in the basement of the station. Nelson decided to return Page to Valparaiso on a night train and find lodging for him in the Porter County Jail before the local inhabitants found out that he had been apprehended. The train reached the Valparaiso depot at 4 a.m. on Friday, January 18th. The Valparaiso City Marshal and Chicago Police Detective Moore were waiting at the depot for the arrival of Nelson and Page. The marshal had brought a fast horse and cutter to the depot to convey Page to the Porter County Jail, and Page was provided escort to the Porter County Jail. Later, it was soon discovered by Valparaiso residents that Chauncey had become a resident at the Porter County Jail. Citizens reportedly gathered in the streets, at stores and groceries, and the city hummed about the murders and the best method that could be employed to dispose of Page. The general consensus was that Page should immediately be taken out and hanged. Obviously, sensing that citizen justice was not in line with the criminal justice process, Porter County Sheriff Bartholomew had Page removed from the jail and placed into a stagecoach for transport to the LaPorte County Jail. At this time, Chauncey emphatically denied any involvement in the murders and stated that Frederica Ludolph was a complete stranger to him. When informed, however, that Frederica was still alive, Page reportedly hung his head and refused to speak. The German population, still outraged, sought to travel to LaPorte County and lynch Page there. On Saturday, January 19th, testimony was provided by G.W. Pierce about what he observed at the site of where the bodies were recovered soon after the incident. The other individual to testify at the inquest witnessed the crime, Frederica Ludolph. The inquest jury's verdict was as follows.
In accordance with evidence submitted, the jury find that the deceased came to their death by violence at the hand of Chauncey F. Page, and that the death was occasioned by shots from a pistol which the said Page caused to be discharged at the bodies of the deceased, feloniously and with premeditated malice.
Within 6 months, Chauncey F. Page was tried for the murder of Emmeline Goss Page and Rachel Hastings Goss Long and the attempted murder of Frederica Ludolph. A request for a change in venue resulted in the trial taking place in LaPorte County rather than in Porter County. The following day, beginning at 9 a.m., witness testimony was heard, with the first witness called to testify being Frederica Ludolph. Though Frederica was severely wounded in the incident, she was able to appear at Page's trial as the principal witness for the state. Eyewitness accounts of the trial state that Chauncey almost fainted when he saw Frederica enter the courtroom. After direct and cross-examinations, Frederica was requested to point out Page by approaching him. She stepped within a few feet of Chauncey, looked him in the eye, and said, "This is the man." Page reportedly looked at Frederica, smiled, and bowed. Many other witnesses gave testimonies for the prosecution. After closing arguments were made in the case, Judge Osborne stated that the
law is not a weapon in the hands of vengeance, but is made to protect human life and property, and it is for the jury to say how these can be best protected. If, in their opinion, in the view of these facts, the taking of a life is necessary, to bring such a verdict, but to otherwise look at it in the light that laws were made more to prevent crime than punish the perpetrator, and bring in their verdict accordingly.
On July 2nd, 1867, at 3 p.m., the jury indicated that it had reached a verdict. This after deliberating the case for approximately 23 hours. The courtroom was soon packed, every seat on the floor and gallery taken by spectators. Hundreds of people waited outside the courthouse door. Page was escorted into the courtroom by the deputy sheriff. Judge Osborne queried the jury if they had decided upon a verdict. The jury foreman, Willard Allen Place, replied in the affirmative, and the handwritten verdict of the jury was handed to Judge Osborne. According to eyewitnesses, the courtroom was as still as death as Judge Osborne read aloud the following verdict.
We, the jury, do say and find the defendant, Chauncey Page, is guilty of murder in the first degree, in the manner and form as he stands charged in said indictment, and that he be imprisoned in the state prison for and during his natural life.
Before the jury was polled, Page stood up to apparently make a statement and lifted his right hand as if taking an oath. One of his counselors, Judge Ferrand, however, touched him, and Page said nothing and sat down. Individuals sitting near Chauncey stated that he appeared to receive his doom with a faint smile, as he probably was expecting a death verdict. Polling of the jurors revealed that they agreed upon a guilty verdict on the first ballot. With respect to punishment, however, the jurors were equally split on their first ballot, 6 voting for life imprisonment and 6 voting for death by hanging. A second ballot, taken an hour or two after the first, saw 7 votes in favor for life imprisonment and 5 for hanging. Balloting for punishment continued until a final verdict was reached, whereby all jurors agreed to life imprisonment. On July 3, 1867, Page was transferred from the LaPorte County Jail to the Indiana State Prison North at Michigan City to begin serving his life term. Little is known of that period Page spent incarcerated at the Indiana State Prison North, though his residence was certainly not an extended stay. During the evening of Tuesday, April 2, 1872, Chauncey committed suicide by choking himself in his cell. Despite the widespread coverage of Page's crimes in newspapers across the United States in 1867, his suicide was but a footnote in the press. In some notices, Page's name was not even mentioned. Instead, he was simply referred to as a life convict in the Indiana State Prison. The Jasper Weekly Courier, published in Jasper, Dubois County, Indiana, was one of the few Indiana newspapers to print a notice of Chauncey's death, writing,
C.F. Page, the life convict at the Northern Prison, turned over the last leaf of his desperate history last Tuesday night by choking himself to death in his cell. His way of shuffling off his mortal coil showed the desperate character of the man and his determination to succeed in this, his second attempt at self-destruction. He made a slip noose of his suspenders, placed it around his neck, sat down, and tied his hands across his knees, fastened the suspenders to his hands with a piece of tarred twine, leaned back and choked himself to death. In this condition, he was found dead in his cell last Wednesday morning.
Dr. Isaac P. Sinclair's physician's report from the medical department of the Indiana State Prison North to the prison's board of directors, dated December 15, 1872, suggests the Page was tormented by his crime. Dr. Sinclair writes,
I have one case of suicide to record. The murderer, Chauncey F. Page, procured ropes from his fellow prisoners and strangled himself to death while in his cell, having previously made several unsuccessful attempts to bring his life to a close. Poor man! He could no longer endure the burnings of his conscience. His was indeed a sad end.
Page's remains were removed from the prison grounds and interred in an unmarked grave at Kimball Cemetery, located in Liberty Township in Porter County.
All right. There you have it. About 33 degrees today. That's like a heat wave after it's, really cold. So this really ain't too bad. But I got another video of this cemetery here that I did. I'll put a link in the description. You can watch it if you want. But I appreciate you watching. We're going to get out and keep going. We'll see you on the next one. Y'all be safe.